So today's little adventure is going to be trying to figure out what's going on with this power window. So the other switches work just fine, just not the driver's side switch. So I need to figure out whether or not it's the switch or the electric motor. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be the motor based on the age and amount of use that this window has had. Though it didn't have any warning signs before it went, or it could be something bound up in the mechanism. But need to know what it is before I start ordering parts, because parts for this car gets very expensive very quickly. So first order of the business, we'll see about getting this control panel out and go from there.
Now my first thought was to remove this switch, thinking that maybe there was a screw that was holding the door panel on hidden underneath it, but that was very wrong. Do not do that. It's actually attached on the inside, so there's no way there. So then next I went and removed a little plug that's inside the handle bezel, and then there's a Phillips head screw that's underneath there. The rest of the door panel is held on by just push clips, and then there's one screw that's underneath the grab handle that I didn't discover till later on. It's kind of in a hidden spot. You have to reach up at a weird angle. There, I found it with my finger. But yeah, you take that out. It's fairly long to get it out of there, but not too bad. With all the screws out and the push pins pulled away, there's two major hooks that kind of mess you up. One is behind the wood trim panel, and the other is along the top edge right by the glass that hooks on that little sharp piece of sheet metal there. Then most of the connectors are just like squeeze and release, except for the window switch where it has a cam over set up to release it. Underneath there, we've got this little moisture barrier sound deadener panel. It's held on with just some mastic, so be very careful when you're prying it apart. I actually put a couple small holes in mine, trying to get it off of there without tearing it up too bad. But definitely want to keep that intact as best as possible for returning the car back to its original condition. And here I'm just going to remove the door modules, just to make room for the motor to come on out when it's all done. The top two screws have to come out, and the bottom one can actually just be loosened and then lift off. And there's enough room in the wiring to get out of there. There's also another moisture barrier that's sandwiched up against the exposed sheet metal there. Basically, so any water that comes down through the door channel will get deflected away from the interior of the car, which was nice to have actually double moisture barriers in there. The hole I'm reaching into now, it contains the plug for the motor. It has two pieces that plug into each other, and then another third piece that retains the plug up against the door. Really, I should have been in there and done some power testing before I pulled the motor out, but I didn't think of that at the time. So here we are. There's 4 bolts that hold the motor itself in position, and then there's a guide track that needs to be removed. From there, you basically have to snake the rollers off the bottom of the window itself. I did the furthest back one first, and then I was able to spin the other part of the scissor out of the way. And I'll tell you what, this thing goes back together way easier than it comes apart. So that was a nice bonus. Again, try not to tear up the plastic liner too bad once I do get this out. Also be careful to not put any strain on the glass or do anything weird. Don't let it drop, because if you get it broke, then that's going to be very expensive.
should just come apart. But it's not. This should be coming out. So that might be where we're bound up at. Let me go find a prying implement, see if we can get this apart. Okay, so I reached up in here and just kept working it, and eventually it popped free. Now we're going to kind of take a peek inside here, see what horrors lie beneath. Or maybe not. Okay. So there appears to be nothing wrong with this drive mech here. Should be nice and smooth. There's no missing teeth or anything weird like that. Equally strange, the motor is free. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll put the motor back together. Then I'm going to hook it up and see if it spins with no load on it, because then that'll translate to where the problem's at. Alright, now I'm just going to take and I have a car battery charger hooked up to the end of these leads here. Just turn it the one way, turn it the other way. So I don't believe this motor is our problem at all. I guess what we'll do now is finish reassembling this, put this back in the car, and then we'll go from there. So at this point we're back together. It's still broken, but my seat memory functions still work. Somehow in this whole mix, now the control for the mirrors doesn't work, nor does these three switches, but this switch, which is the passenger side rear, now controls this window, which is just really odd that it did that. I'll power it up real quick. See, it's working just fine, but all these other ones do nothing. So I have a feeling it's this switch here, because there was some corrosion on the board. But so I think the next thing I'm going to do is replace this switch. If that doesn't work, then I'm going to replace the door control module, because now it's saying that the passenger door is open, but it's not open. So I bet you, I'm almost thinking it's the module. But anyway, that'll be an adventure for another time. Did want to say something I figured out kind of after the fact. This piece of trim needs to come off first, because because of the way it kind of slots in on this piece of plastic here. So you got to start this edge, get it in place, and then snap these two tabs in. And then from there you got to kind of tease this into position. And that's that. Single screw holds this bezel in place. So just a real quick wrap up on this last video. I had a brainwave kind of overnight as I was dealing with the weird behavior that window switch was causing. And so I opted to do a hard reset on the car. I unhooked the battery from the in the trunk, powered it, it already was drawn down because the trunk light draws most of the residual current out. But I turned the car into the on position, turned it off, rehooked the battery. Car was able to unlock like it was supposed to. All the switches are working the way it was originally. So in the end, it came down to the control module in the door needed to be reset. That's why it was the window decided it was not going to work. That's why we had such weird behavior. So that would probably be the thing to start with, I guess. I'll make sure I put a note in the video description to always reset that first to see if it cures the issue before you go into disassembling the rest of it. Anyway, I hope this is useful, and until next time.